Hello, my friend. I'm so happy to have you for today's episode of the Enneagram and Marriage podcast. Today, we're talking about addiction and relationships, how we all heal together with Ian Cron. Ian needs a little introduction for most of you. He is one of the people who really gave us our modern Enneagram popularity in terms of putting it out there with his podcast, now called Typology. Also, his book that he co authored with Suzanne Stabile, The Road Back to You, sold over 1 million copies, and he just gave us such a refreshing and deep way of talking about personality amidst all of his other work as a psychotherapist, as a priest, as somebody who really allows his Christian faith to be part of his vulnerable storytelling, and who also lands us right here today with his new book, The Fix, which is fantastic. I am so thankful for what he's teaching us about addiction. Man, do I appreciate him, especially because I'm in the throes of it with so many couples right now. And it's just so healing when we can all admit that we all have problems, we all suffer, we all have need. And when we misalign ourselves and think we're better than, or that we could never divulge, or that we could never even struggle, we often miss a chance to do our own humble healing work. So I'm just so thankful you're here with us today. Of course, everything of Ian's, including his book and now workbook, are also in the show notes. And I just want to alert you that this is one of those episodes to send to your friends and family, your partners, because this is an episode that could be very life-changing if you've had some addictive or shadow parts of yourself that you haven't been looking at, or if you have somebody in your life who's actively struggling with addiction and they're feeling alone. This time together today could be the life-changing moment you need. So I'm very excited for you, almost giddy, as you can tell. Also, I want to say that for those who are just already aware that they're in the throes of it and they need to just start getting into the work, make sure you just really take some time with the resources he's providing, because just really next level materials for helping us through our stuff. So extra excited you're with us today for this. Let's talk to Ian. Thank you so much for joining us, Ian, for the Enneagram and Marriage podcast. We are just so delighted to have you. You have a new book out. It is phenomenal. Can you introduce yourself for the 3 or 4 people who probably don't know you here with just a re-intro for the rest of us?
Sure, I am Ian Morgan Cron. I am a psychotherapist, an author, a speaker, podcaster, Episcopal priest, and trained spiritual director and award-winning songwriter, all in one person. And I love my life. Married 38 years, 3 kids who I adore,
Hmm.
and I live in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh my gosh. Okay, now anyone who didn't know your impressive vitae is now just like soaking it up with us. Like, wow, we got Ian on the pod and we're so grateful. You're so vulnerable in your new book too. It's majestic, and we get to talk at length today about these heights as well as some of the depths. So thank you again. And you
Yeah.
guys, yeah, we're so grateful. Um, Anything you want to add to that, just about how you go from the heights to the depths in your book, because you do such a beautiful job. Was that hard having your editor and you working on being so vulnerable in this book?
Not really. I mean, it's first of all, the book is titled The Fix: How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and everyone in between.
Hmm.
And you know, um, vulnerability is, part of the currency of transformation. And
Yeah.
my own and then in communicating my own journey and experience, hopefully it becomes part of another person's transformation.
Mm.
And I actually had a blast writing that book. I mean, I had so much fun writing this book. And you'd think, oh my gosh, he's writing a book about, everyone's an addict and everybody needs the 12 steps as a
Yeah.
path for, spiritual growth. It sounds so serious. It's like, I don't know. I feel like in the spiritual journey, if there's not joy and laughter, then
Yeah.
something's broken,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and I'm not saying that, I mean, the journey is filled with tears and joy. And if both aren't present, then I'm a little suspicious that something's gone wrong.
Mm. Yeah, and things are becoming more transactional versus transparent. And I love that you keep that depth. And like we said, the depth of joy, the depth of, the heights of glory. And I see that when we get to think about all you've done and all you've accomplished, well over millions of copies of books sold, and so much success on your podcast, in your practice as a clergy, as family, otherwise psychotherapist. And yet, you're saying to us all, look, I can do this. I can model this for you because we all have stuff. And if we don't own that, we will, there's trouble. And so that's why I wanted to ask you that first question. And also this one about how you said just now, everyone struggles with addiction. This is something I've been bringing to my clients, even after noticing some of them are walking through infidelity and there's that pointed villain there. And you remind us we all have stuff. Can you tell us how you came to realize that it wasn't just addicted people in quotes?
Yeah. So what's an addiction, right? Like an addiction is any compulsive, unhealthy relationship one might have with a person, a substance, or a behavior
Hmm.
that has mood altering effects
Yeah.
and negative consequences,
Yeah.
right? And yet you keep doing it despite what it's doing to your well-being, right? Like,
Mhm.
so you just continue on in it. So the great Christian psychiatrist Gerald May once said, "To be alive is to be addicted, and to be alive and addicted is to stand in need of grace."
Mm.
The early church mothers and fathers would have not used the word addiction; they would have used the word attachments. That people form attachments with people or substances or behaviors in order to make life more tolerable, apart from God's mercy, love, grace, and power.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
They're spiritual bypasses.
Hmm.
And the problem is that when you start to use external things to solve internal problems,
Mm.
eventually the external thing becomes a bigger problem than the problem it was trying to solve.
Mm. That's so true.
Yep, whether that's workaholism or porn or drugs or alcohol or nicotine or perfectionism or people pleasing or codependency or sports betting, go on and on and on. Food, overeating, eating anxiety, whatever our thing is, right? Like we are people who regularly go in search of solutions that don't solve anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I notice how in your book, in addition to talk about the attachments that help some people who have such a stigma around the word addictions, you also talk about how each type has certain places we go to hide, to try to manifest things on our own versus God. And I think that's what's probably most important when we're having that fundamental attribution error about our spouses and others. Well, I'm a little bit healthier than them because they cheated or they did this. But we're forgetting we were part of the whole story of humanity. We're all east of Eden. And so I love how you brought us back to that. It's fair playing ground. We all have stuff. Now let's go from there
Yeah.
and talk about your journey, which like was so refreshing to hear. No one knew this was going on with you when we were all seeing all of your success.
Well, I mean, look, I first came into an understanding of the 12 steps through a recovery community in decades ago, right?
Yeah.
When my solution was alcohol, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then I had multiple decades of never using a mood altering substance. And
Mhm.
then in 2020, I relapsed, came back to this 12-step community and really understood the 12 steps in a way I hadn't previously,
Interesting.
and really was like, oh, now I get it. And I realized that the 12 steps were this incredible design for living that actually anyone would benefit from practicing,
Yeah.
right? Like, wait a minute. This is not just for, those people, alcoholics, addicts, food, people with food issues, it's not just for them, it's for
Yeah.
all of us. And it's just simply a gospel pattern of living that anyone could live. And experience really dramatic, revolutionary changes in their hearts and in their lives. I
Mhm.
mean, the cool thing about the 12 steps is we have tens of millions of examples of people whose lives have been utterly changed as a result of practicing them. And I think Christians should take advantage of it.
I love that. That is such a good reminder. If we're looking for research, we see it in all these little pockets. Like you said, we already have a lot of little tips, but to put it all in the 12 steps and to really apply that to our spiritual lives is something new to me because
Mm.
I studied marriage and family, and there was the people in our clinical psychology program for masters that went to the addiction route, and so I've been using a lot of smaller programs to do that with myself and others and going to therapy and such. But to have you show us this in a way that we were able to say, okay, this is a book that Ian wrote. We trust Ian. What is there in it for me? It shocked me to see how what you said is true. Just these practices, those inventories you do before bed. I was like, I want to incorporate that. Yes, I do my gratitudes, but you have so many pieces for us in an organized fashion. And it sounds like when you understood the 12 steps before, you didn't see all the depth and the layering and how beautiful it could be. Is that right?
Yeah, I always say that the first time around, and this is a long time ago, right? My first go round, I say I audited the class.
Oh,
I
that's
didn't quite take it for credit, you know.
yeah.
Now, there were a lot of reasons for that,
Mm,
that I won't bore you with, but they weren't all, the reason wasn't a lack of desire so much as a lack of opportunity.
yeah.
I was a young guy. I was, you know, dumber than a bag of hammers in some ways, and I was just, out there in the world. And I remember going to my first 12-step meeting and being like, I am like, everyone in here is twice my age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it was just a part of the world at a time when there just wasn't as much opportunity for me to get plugged in as there is now.
Yeah.
And so it was just a very different experience. This time around, I was like also, I'm an older man. I've been through a lot more. I've experienced many more things. I have multiple degrees I didn't have back then. I've got years of reading and thinking behind me and experience. And so what became apparent to me was like, oh, now I see these 12 steps as being something that are incredible. The steps of recovery. I mean, gosh, there are miracles happening in church basements all the time,
Mm,
where these meetings get together. But all the principles of the steps, everything in them, everybody can enjoy the same life change from them that,
mm,
you know, people who have identified addictions have every day.
mm. Yes. And I think that there's probably a lot of value in doing work in different segments of life. Of course, I can even remember doing that myself. I'm in the middle years, but I remember saying, I did my therapy. I don't have to dig that back up. And I love how you said, we audit sometimes at different earlier seasons. And then when we go through more life transitions, there's new depths to process and new work to do.
Hmm.
So, anyone listening, you guys need this because there's more work to do with each layer. And that's why the elders were the first to drop their stones when the woman was caught in sin, because they knew as I get older, I see my stuff. And I feel like when we have that fundamental attribution error in our marriages and elsewhere, we're what you talk about in the book really missing ourselves in the work we could be doing because of that victim mentality. So I wanted to ask, is that where some of this really starts? Let's say we've been doing some of our work, or even some of us have been extra diligent and really embracing the 12 steps, and yet addiction still comes in. Is that because maybe for many reasons, maybe we have something external happen, but I guess I was wondering for those who are like, I'm doing some of my internal work. Why am I still struggling? What would you say they can be looking out for as far as symptoms or things that you want to be careful of because you could step back in the pattern?
Well, I mean, look, a number of things. First of all, when we're just talking about addictions here for a
Yeah.
second,
Yeah.
like addictions are very complicated.
Yeah.
Like clinically speaking,
Yeah.
very complicated.
Yeah.
And there's, some people say, oh, it's just about trauma, or some people will say it's just about, lack of willpower, which is
Mhm.
absolutely insane, but that's a
Mhm.
separate issue.
Right. Right. Right.
Or some people will say, it's all about, genetics and family patterning or whatever. It's like actually it's all the above, and who knows? It's a very complicated creature.
Yeah.
I would say that if there is a path out
Mm.
because but the thing you have to watch out for is isolation.
Mm.
Um, you We need community, right? Like addictions, attachments form in isolation. As a friend of mine likes to say, we get sick alone and we get well together.
Mm.
And I think that's actually a really great truth. We get sick alone and we get well together. And so, that's why the steps, it's interesting. Like the word I never appears in the 12 steps.
Love that.
It starts off with the word we. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, sex, drugs, porn, whatever your thing is,
Mhm.
that our lives have become unmanageable. It starts with the word we.
Mm.
The presumption there then is, or the assumption there is that um, the journey toward healing will be a we deal, right?
Mm. Mhm.
So when you find yourself falling into isolation, dropping out of community, falling into old patterns of thinking, um, these sorts of things should all be kind of red flags that you need to do something different.
Mm. Mhm. And you need to do something and tell somebody about it.
Hmm.
That's good. I really appreciate you saying that. Even when somebody's doing their work and they're in coaching or therapy, by the way, myself included here, keep referencing myself here. You'll hear that. I notice that the tendency can be, okay, we figured out what we need to do. Now go do that to their spouse, and I'll be over here waiting when you're done. And something I'm learning through your book is no, we need to do this together.
Yeah.
When they do the hard thing and let go of a piece of that addiction or try to slam that door, like the prodigal son needed the father, you need to be waiting with arms open. And to have that, you need a lot of community surrounding you. And so I'm doing that work with them and I'm hearing you say that. And I'm also aware that in our individualistic culture, especially for those Enneagram types, that we like our independence, I feel like that's such a risk. And I thank you for being vulnerable to tell us it's a risk not only worth taking, but that we need to take.
Yes, absolutely. And, I think there are, it's interesting. People ask me all the time, are there certain Enneagram types that are more prone to addiction,
Yes.
And I'm like, well, first of all, like I think addiction is sort of an equal opportunity enslaver.
Mm,
Like, when you hear people talking about I don't know, so and so has an addictive personality,
yeah.
right? They'll say that. And I'm like, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as an addictive personality. Now, you may have people that you meet, could be any type that has more trouble with low tolerance for frustration or impulse control, like they have
Hmm.
problems around impulse control.
Yeah.
But ultimately, any type on the Enneagram can be an addict. Every type on the Enneagram is an addict, right? And addictions show up differently in different types, but it just shows up equally,
Mm,
across all types. And in fact, you could argue that the Enneagram reveals at least a core addiction that every person has. Like, for example, Krista, for you, that gluttony is a kind of addiction,
hmm.
right?
That's,
And you can try to stop it on your own unaided willpower, but good luck,
hmm.
right? Like you need a power greater than you to help you out of
Hmm.
this mess, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's why we talk about grace, you
Mm,
know. Uh,
yes.
that's what grace does. And so the book really lays out how the 12 steps could be helpful for everybody on the addiction continuum from mild to severe. And how it's like sometimes people say to me, well, is this book just for addicts or alcoholics? I'm like, good night. How
Yeah.
about if it's for anybody who wants to have a better life? I mean,
That's a cute way
basically,
to
I
say
mean, like the 12 steps are for anybody who wants to have a better, richer, deeper, more, eh, you know, uh, present experience of shalom in their life. Well, then here's where you should go. Check this out.
Yes. And I feel like the overlay of shame around the 12 steps is something culturally we have to look at with care because we could miss. Just like Enneagram, just like so many other great systems, just like therapy in general, amidst the most far right leaning evangelicals, whom I love and live near in Florida. It's I think it's important because even I have that bit of stigma. Like, and I'm trying not to be, and I learned not to have that when I was at Wheaton and all these different things. And yet I still come in with like, well, the 12 steps are for somebody who's sicker than me. And it's just like your book helped me to see, no, they're for everybody. I already knew I had addictive qualities, but to really see that there's a patterning, that there's a way to walk through it with all of the things we do with Enneagram work, with the social instinct, with the one-to-one instinct, with the self-care, with the type work. And it really does cover it all. So I just want listeners to know that you don't have to, you may feel stigma, but to hear us saying that even if it rises up in you like it does with me, and like it did with young Ian, who was auditing and younger than everybody, it's so good to come back to. So thank you
Yeah.
for bringing us back.
So let's destigmatize addiction for a second
Yes.
because it's a tiresome deal.
Yeah.
Um, there is this mindset that I periodically run into, which is like, oh, those people. And I'm like,
Mhm.
those people? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, it's us people.
Yeah. It's
Like,
othering when you do that. Yeah.
it's a ridiculous idea. If you're reading the same Bible that I'm reading, that's a
Yeah.
ridiculous idea, right? And usually, sometimes, dare I say this, it's people projecting their own shame onto another subset of the human population because they don't want to look at their own stuff.
Mm. So true. And
So
we've all
if I
done it,
can,
but yes, so
yeah.
true.
So if I villainize some subset of the population called addicts or alcoholics, right? And it's like, I'm
Mhm.
just going to villainize those people, then I don't
Mhm.
have to look at my stuff. I can sit around and just feel superior to them.
And same with
And
Enneagram. If those Enneagrammers who are devil worshippers and
oh, please don't even get me going.
no, me
Oh my
too. I'm done with
Lord.
that. I'm done.
Jeez. I don't even want to talk back.
Right, me too. I'm there. I have talked back. I'm done.
Yeah, I don't to that particular sub, I actually had someone go after me about that the other day. And I
Oh,
don't, I, this is all new to me. I mean, it's so interesting. When The Road Back to You came out, I took no heat, zero heat,
I'm jealous.
right? And then and it was years in that some small, loud, trollish group of the
Hmm.
population, right?
Hmm.
Oh, well, it's this, it derives from this and it comes from that. And it's like, okay, wait a second here. Okay,
Hmm.
let's just do this.
Hmm.
Have you been in therapy or counseling? Yes, I have. Okay. So, what do you know about Freud?
Right.
And
Exactly.
they'll say, well, I said, well, you know that Freud is the founder of modern psychology. Oh, yeah, yeah. Do you know how he felt about religion and Christianity in
Mm,
particular?
mm, mhm,
Was he a fan? Absolutely not. He
mm,
thought that religion was the opiate of the people. He was an atheist who had no time
mm.
for faith and miracles and all that kind of stuff, right? And yet, you go to therapy where your counselor talks to you all the time about the unconscious, the subconscious,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
He's just so the headwaters of therapy come from a guy, and yet you avail yourself of the truth that is in it.
Mm, mm,
Okay. All right. So then I'll
mhm.
say to him, do you go to yoga? And they'll be like, well, yeah, I mean, I do go to yoga. I said, okay, so you go to yoga, even though it derives from a non-Christian source, right? It's like, and yet now you're just going to get on the Enneagram. I said, look, this is ridiculous. Like, if you're going to be consistent
That's
across
right.
all of your life.
Right.
And,
That is true.
I don't know. Don't get me going. I start to
No, I
be on the
know. I'm
soapbox, but I just find
sorry.
it all so
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's like, okay, let's just say it comes from a cookie. It has parts of it that have passed through, non-Christian hands. I'm like, great, let's take it back.
Anything in the world has, you know?
Let's just take it back and redeem it. Let's make it ours.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
should we just pass on it because we're so anxious and needing to find some moral
Yeah.
high ground to stand on so we can go look at us being, you know, passing out our purity tests.
Yeah, right. Right. And missing these things, I was frantic to get my hands on the Enneagram with my couples a decade ago, or a little less after your book came out. Frantic because I'd been using all these family systems. I was the assessment specialist when I was a master's level psychologist. They were giving me all the $1,000 and more tests to do on everyone. Do your MMPIs, do all your clinical assessments. It's not that those things don't have great value. But
Yeah.
when I got this sleek, elegant Enneagram that went to these depths and has all these layers, it made my work much quicker delivered to my clients,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
we could get deeper. So to have people still coming at me with the arrows about that is just like you said,
Yeah.
there's not much extra energy. But I brought it up because I think for some of us, myself included, it can trigger the shame spiral. Somebody asks me on my podcast, then I say yes, I read their book, right? Oh, I didn't know you were Enneagram. That's devil worship. I'm not coming on. And it's like, okay, I want my
Yeah.
pound cake. So back to
Mm.
the addiction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that I have all this shame, yes, exactly. I think I'm gonna
Right,
go eat a.
breathing, seeing the next client, doing our Enneagram work, having my dessert. So tell us, Ian, when we're shaming others for their addictions and we're all in it, like what can we say to ourselves when it hits us, when we outgroup?
Well, I mean, look, it's just like, just remember what Jesus always said about, make sure before you point out the splinter in someone else's eye that you remove the plank in your own first. And I am actually someone who does watch out for projections, right? So,
Mm,
and what I mean by that is,
idea. Hmm.
when I'm being hypercritical of somebody else or shaming somebody else, I
Hmm.
realize I can feel it in my body and I can step back from the experience and ask myself the question, what is it in me that I see in that other person and I'm punishing them for something that is actually my own
Mm,
problem,
mm,
you
that's
know?
good work. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the problem is shaming other people can feel very delicious in the moment,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love
right?
your stories in the book about you doing that. I'm not as good at that as a seven because I avoid so many emotions that
Right.
I really enjoyed hearing you have some relishing in those.
I mean, look, I've done it. You've done it. We've all done this, right? And we just have to be careful that it
Yeah.
isn't a normal pattern for
Yeah.
us, right? And
Yes.
that when it does arise, that we go, nope, nope, don't do that. Like
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. It
you
doesn't
know,
feel good once I do it. I don't know if you have that brief euphoria.
oh yeah, yeah, it doesn't feel good. Eventually, it's like eating too much pound cake.
Yeah. He is. So I'm glad we're walking that through with people. Like when we're in that space of throwing out stigma, judging whatever it's about, Enneagram addiction, anything else, when we really finish that up, it's like closing the door on a potential relationship, closeness, and intimacy, which we've already established here today. We need each other. So then when we just lock everybody out and we're the only one left, it's kind of like the C.S. Lewis Great Divorce analogy. I think you mentioned that book as well, but we're riding out into orbit by ourselves now. So I love that you keep saying to us today, we all have stuff, but there, but for the grace of God, we go. And so I think it's helpful for couples, especially because this is so many of our listeners here are couples. What has helped you in that lens to be able to say, like, I know we especially do this with our own partnerships. What can we do when we're like, yeah, my guys at my meeting or my ladies, we get each other, we get it. But then this person on the inside with us, they really see us wrestling with our demons and they really see us with, my husband Wes knows all my stops. What would you say we can do together to monitor ourselves so that we're not always pointing those fingers at our spouse?
Mm. Yeah, I see this a lot.
Mm.
Um, I think it's just it's cultivating an interior posture of humility and
Mm.
openness to the fact that we are participating that to attribute blame to another person for for failure in relationship
Mhm.
And to demonize them and to say that they have 100% responsibility for this,
Yeah.
that is a very unhealthy place to be. It's
Mhm.
just not even true. Forget it. It's just not true, right?
Mhm.
And and it's not even helpful to assign percentages of blame. Oh, I'm 30% to blame,
Yeah.
but you're 70%,
Yeah. Yeah. Some
It's
of our
like, look,
clients are.
we are engaged in a dance here.
Mm.
And we have problems in our marriage or in our partnership, and these problems have risen to a level that feels unsustainable,
Mhm.
and that is an invitation from God to an experience of intimacy with Him that we didn't know previously existed, right? So
Mhm.
this whole situation is an invitation from God to the two of us to have an experience of him that we didn't know previously existed, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard, but we both have skin in this game. Like there's just no
Mhm.
way one
Mhm.
person is ultimately. I'll give you an example of this, and I got a little bit of heat from this once, but I'll just say it for the sake of being provocative. It's 9:41 in the morning and I'm feeling my coffee, so I'll go for it.
Yes.
So I remember I had a client once, this is like 30 years ago, and her husband was having serial affairs. Had
Mhm.
serial affairs, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I won't tell you the reason why I was this bold with this person. It's too long a clinical story. But
Mhm.
she's like, I had no idea. I was betrayed. I had no idea. And I
Mhm.
paused and I said, Barbara,
Mhm.
you did have an idea. You did know. You just refused to know at the same time.
Mhm.
You knew it and you refused to know it at the same time.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's called denial, right?
Mhm.
Like, surely you knew when he was gone 16 nights a month, and it was always with sort of thinly veiled like excuses.
Mhm.
And there were credit card bills, and there were cell phone. It's and you are a graduate of an Ivy League college. You are not a an intellectually challenged person here.
Right.
You clearly knew. And she
Mhm.
just burst into tears and she said, I did, I think. I think I did know, but I
Mhm.
didn't want to know at the same time.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, that's good. So now she was beginning to soften to the idea that she was involved in this dance as well,
Mhm.
right? That there,
Yes.
and now we could actually get somewhere, right?
Mm.
Before
Mm.
we that, we weren't going to get anywhere. He was just you know, and then this is the other thing. So this guy turns out to have a sex addiction. Now I run into people with sex addictions all the time. And if they don't have sex addictions, they have porn addictions, or
Right.
they have relationship like love addiction.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm like, listen, Barbara, let's say husband's name was Tom. It wasn't, but we'll say it was.
Yeah.
Um, I said, listen, Tom doesn't have a porn problem or a sex problem. He has a porn solution. He has a sex solution. That his behavior isn't the problem. It's his solution to the problem.
Mm. Yeah, there's another problem that you guys don't even maybe process about together and that he could
Yeah,
uncover with
yeah,
you. Yes.
yeah. So just understand, like his acting out, it may be that it has very little to do with sex or love. It
Mm-hmm.
has to do with him trying to fix another problem in his heart through a very
Mm-hmm.
misdirected, misguided way. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was just with a therapist the other day and they said something great. They said, I don't deal with problems. They said, uh, what was I can't remember the exact context of how they said it, but it was so brilliant.
Ah.
They said, oh, I don't deal with people's problems. I deal with their solutions.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, that's a very good therapeutic lens, right?
Mhm.
Like to
Yeah.
say, I'm much more interested in what your solutions are than your problems.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you know that you're going to be more positive psychology there and they're going to love that and we want to be positive, but you also and I know we have to get down to those roots or we're going to miss it unless it's a very
Yeah.
simple thing. Once I had a
Well,
couple it was so simple and they just needed a little education and they were off on their way. Most
right.
of the time it's much deeper.
Yeah. Well, listen, um, People engage in self-defeating behaviors oftentimes because it's some part of them thinks that this is the solution. It,
Hmm.
it it may look illogical to everybody else, but to that person, it looks like, listen,
Hmm.
it drinking, people have drinking problems or drug problems. That's not the problem.
Right.
That is their solution to another problem on the inside. And until they can release their grip on that solution and turn their attention toward the real problem,
Hmm.
then there will be no healing, right? Now, that's where the 12 steps work. Because what the 12 steps do is they're a design for living that anyone could take advantage of that is all about healing your and deepening your relationship with God, yourself, and others. Because when there are fundamental breakdowns in relationship, then we become prey to things like addictions and crazy solutions to problems.
Hmm. That's right. And that's really important for many of us. We've learned about trauma through the lens, thankfully, of Gabor Mate recently. And I was just doing early this morning a training from him. And yet you bring us to what can we do about that once we've noticed that the addiction or the person suffering from addiction, it didn't start here and there's a deeper layer. You're bringing us, but here's what you do about that. And I think that's where I was pausing. Was it was a great insight the last few years to get his work, to hear, oh my gosh, we've been judging everybody who's got more severely seen addictions, but we all have addictions and we're part of the problem too when we judge, because now they're alienated and they're farther than ever away from us and we're farther than ever away from them. And so we're all suffering more. And you're saying, okay, when you get to that recognition and you can put away some of the stigma that you're not addicted and you come inside of these 12 steps, now would you say we're now unpacking our triggers, we're cleaning out the closet, doing the inventory more, and that's what helps us to feel like we don't need those things anymore to do it for us?
Yeah. All right, let's play attachment theory. You wanna?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So all human beings have a need to feel, and this is all Dan Siegel stuff, right?
Yeah.
We all have a need early in life to feel seen, safe, soothed. And when we
Mhm.
get that, we form what's called a secure attachment. So there's the four S's, right? We need to
Mhm.
feel seen, soothed, and safe.
Mhm.
If we have those three things, then we will form a secure attachment, and that sets us up for, you know, good things in the future.
Yeah.
Now, um, because we live in a fallen world, very few of us come into the world
Mhm.
feeling adequately seen, soothed, or safe.
Mhm.
And many of us grow up in situations like I did where none of that was present.
Mhm.
All right. Now,
Mhm.
therefore, you have problems in relationships or forming healthy attachments, right?
Mhm.
Now, when you are that kind of person, what happens is you will look to form a relationship with a person, a behavior, or a substance that makes you feel seen, soothed, and secure and
Mhm.
safe.
Mhm.
And that's what things like porn or, all these things are just ways of trying to feel seen, soothed, and secure,
Mhm.
and safe. And they're, of course, misguided. And so, therefore, um, the 12 steps say, look, we need to deal with your relationships, these ruptures in your relationship with God, yourself, and others, so you can form healthy attachments to God, self, and others. And
Mhm.
therefore, it renders your need then for outside, behaviors, substances, or experiences
Mhm.
unnecessary now. Now
Mhm.
they're just unnecessary
Yeah.
because, I'm plugged in all the right ways.
Mhm.
And that's what the steps help us to do. Plug in all the right ways.
Mm. And they're ongoing. I love that because you talk about, hey, when I hit a moment of crisis now, I know to call my sponsor. I know that I need support. I'm not to go back in the closet and do things with whatever alcohol or pills or whatever our choice is. And I love that you're naming that in these steps. These lenses are there for us to go back to God, to go back to others, to take inventories. Thank you. It's hard
Yeah.
work and it's the most important work. Yeah, thank you. Where can we reach this work further? Where do you feel like would be the best place to send our listeners if they hopefully see themselves here with us?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So, a couple things. One is the name of the book is The Fix: How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and everyone in between. Amazon, Books a Million, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold, go and grab a copy. Now, here's the cool thing. It comes with a 100, well, doesn't come with it, but you can also buy, there's a 120-page workbook that comes with it. And that workbook would literally walk you or a small group of people through the 12 steps of recovery. And even if you're somebody who's like, my only addiction is, baked goods, that's fine. You can still benefit
Yeah.
from the
Mhm.
12 steps as much as I or anybody else does. Because it
Mhm.
is a spiritual path of living based on gospel principles and truths.
Yeah.
Nothing about it is, in opposition to something Jesus taught. It's all completely, it passes the purity test.
Okay.
And you know, the another thing I would let your listeners know about is so we just recently launched a new Enneagram assessment called the Typology Institute Enneagram Assessment. And let me just tell you about this because you'll appreciate this as a therapist.
Yeah.
So I just got so tired of seeing poorly constructed assessments, right? Um,
Mhm.
for those of you who don't know, um, putting together what's called a psychometric that accurately, with
Mhm.
reliability and validity, putting a test of that together is really hard work. So we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. We worked with
Mhm.
a
Wow.
research psychologist and team to put together a really great assessment. And it is
Mhm.
now launched, and we're just putting it out. And that can be found on my website, ianmorgancron.com. Just go to assessment. I'm really proud of this thing. It's something that took 2 years of
Oh,
super hard work. And I think it's going to be of real service to people. It gives people their subtypes, gives it their wings, give them their
ah,
type. And so it's a really nice assessment. I use it a lot in the corporate world. That's where it firstly, like in my corporate work.
mhm.
But now it's sort of open more generally to the wide open public.
Hmm. Well, you're absolutely right. That's going to be such a gift to me and my clients and just every listener here. And also getting connected with you with the book, the workbook, which I didn't know about. Now I'm excited to go
Yeah.
through that again because I can tell I already need to go through the book again. And I'm thankful for all these resources at ianmorgancron.com, and everything's in the show notes, of course, for the book and this, as well as your podcast. So thank you so much for your time with us today, Ian. It's been such a joy.
Thanks, Krista. I had a blast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am just gleaning still from the episode. As you heard, now I've got the workbook on order. I'm so grateful to go through this again. I do not need more pound cake all the time. I need work. So I'm excited to do that with you. I do like my treats, but I need those sobering moments even more. So I'm grateful. I thank you for being here. Let's take that courage and learn what we need to truly thrive and grow and allow ourselves to receive that as we also bring, hopefully, our gifts and healing to others where we can. So thankful for you joining me today. Check everything out in the show notes. I'll talk to you soon.